Heck of a day. Vikings ascend to 4-1 here on, we're going to talk about it, Sam and I, here on the Locked On Vikings postcast, brought to you by Bet Online. Sam, how you doing over there at US Bank Stadium?
Hanging in, Luke. We've heard your complaints about my audio the last two times I've been here, and hopefully we've resolved them. And I'm excited to talk with clarity about today's bonkers football game. The Vikings only play crazy football.
They're rivaling the Seahawks in terms of wacky weirdness. Yeah, and maybe one of these days I'll get a proper link to these live streams. The first time. Let's talk, though, about somebody else who messed up but ultimately figured it out. The Minnesota Vikings spring out to a 21-3 lead, blow it by the end of the third quarter, and then come back with a 17-play drive, go-ahead touchdown on a Kirk Cousins QB sneak. A lot of clutchness, a lot of really interesting stuff. My question to you every time on these, Sam, is what's the headline? What's the main thing that we're talking about after this? I feel like it could be a bunch of things. It could be defensive woes, Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins. But what's the lead?
Yeah, I think it's corny to talk about resilience because it's just so unmeasurable, but this team appears to have it. The conversation for a third week in a row is whether this team is actually for real, because they've flirted now correct. And for the previous 2 years, this is a game they probably lose. It's a game where the momentum turns one way and they can't right the ship. And this year they have been righting the ship. They come back from behind against Detroit, New Orleans, and Chicago, all opponents that are mediocre, but they do find a way to win at the end. Kirk Cousins has engineered some clutch drives, and that does matter. Now, you can argue that those positions are of Kirk's and the team's own creation. I thought Kirk had an above-average game today, but he also throws a bad interception, and just the offense in general, lackadaisical for a quarter and a half. That doesn't detract from an incredible final drive, 17 plays, 75 yards, 7 minutes, and a Kirk Cousins sneak touchdown, plus a third down conversion with his legs, plus 4 other third down conversions. That's all great stuff. So if you're looking at this team on the NFC curve, when the conference as a whole is extremely mediocre, the Vikings kind of fit right in with that, and then they are winning the coin flip games. And in a league of small sample sizes, you can get away with that. If this is baseball, it eventually evens out. In football, it's probably going to be a little unbalanced. You will occasionally win or lose more than 50% of these coin flips, and the Vikings are winning all of them right now, and that does matter. Even though it seems like they're doing it unsustainably, these wins will count down the road, so it gives them some wiggle room with some tougher games ahead, perhaps. And if you're a Vikings fan, you can still be pretty pumped about where they're at.
Yeah, I feel like once I get a minute to kind of catch my breath and back away and really study this game, it's going to look like, okay, they played way better than a 7-point win. And to be honest, look, the Bears were driving down the field. They would have had to score. They would have had to maybe go for 2 if they were going to do that and get that, or they were going to have to win in overtime. So they would have to score and win some kind of coin flip for the Bears to win that game. So it felt a lot closer, I think, than it was. For the majority of the game, other than that quarter and a half sort of disappearing act, they dominated. And I think they deserved to be out in front 21-3. A lot of that was, and Cousins talked about it after the game, just the game plan that O'Connell set him up with, and then executing that, especially with free snap reads. The Bears came out in a lot of single high, which means a lot more man coverage, a lot less in the secondary. They came out worried about Dalvin Cook. I'm going to say that's how I'm going to interpret that. And then they left Justin Jefferson one-on-one with undrafted rookies, and Jefferson had an insane day. So they deserved that. And I think credit to Cousins for kind of finding that pre-snap, killing a lot of plays, finding the play calls, whether it was the one he was in or having to say that can and get to a different play call. Credit to all of that for finding all of that production. And then as things were falling apart, you throw that bad pick, come back in, and then find it again without the help of all of that tempo. That's what really stuck out to me. Those first 2 drives, the Vikings weren't huddling. They were just getting to the line with maybe 2 calls at the line of scrimmage. Cousins was making a read and picking one. That's the way I interpreted it. I'm doing a little guessing there.
And it prevents subs.
Yeah, and it keeps them in their sub package, keeps them going, gets the big guys tired. But it's also just Cousins' ability to get to the line of scrimmage, figure out what defense the Bears are in, find its weakness, and exploit it. I feel like Cousins made life easy on himself today in those first ones. But then not having the ability to do that tempo. You can't do that all day. You just can't install that many tempo plays. It's too much to memorize. But then fourth quarter, you don't have that. You have to line up and really find it, win post-snap, and then he did that, especially on those third downs and stuff. That's why I got the Kirk jersey on today. He earned it. It was a good day. That if you want to be really mad about that pick, you can, but you kind of have to cherry pick just that and ignore a lot to be unhappy with this Kirk day.
Yeah, 32 of 41, 296, a touchdown pass to Jalen Reagor.
Yeah, and a run, and a rushing touchdown.
Touchdown run, first down run, 1 sack taken. Yeah, he did a lot of things right, including 17 completions to start the game. So you can't take any of that away. The Bears send out cornerbacks that were ranked 106, 113, and 143 on PFF of all cornerbacks who've taken a snap this year. So that explained maybe the start the Vikings had.
No Jalen Johnson, which was a big question.
Jalen Jones, not Jalen Johnson, apparently.
Yeah.
I would like to see the ceiling of this defense and this offense aim just a little higher, right? And I know we're picking nits. The Vikings are 4-1, but you had a chance to put together a 4-quarter performance on either side of the ball. Pick one, right? Like they could have walked away saying, all right, the defense is in a better spot. Okay, the offense is in a better spot. And they could have changed the narrative with a convincing victory to say, okay, there's measurable progress being made here.
Yeah, here's a bad team and we killed them.
And right, like the Bills did today, right? That's what elite teams do. Now, I do find encouragement in 12 of 15 on third down and 4 of 4 in the red zone. 2 areas that have been woeful. Bottom 6 in the league this year. And the Vikings were 80% and 100% in those 2 categories respectively. So I think this is a better offensive game than Detroit. It's a better offensive game than New Orleans. And the play calling today was fun. It got Kirk rolling out, a lot of play action early, some gadget plays, a couple trick plays I thought were interesting. And they got their best player involved. The running game was effective. So everything really did come together, and it just kind of happened that the defense got lackadaisical in the second half. The number of plays and opportunities the offense had was reduced in the second half. And again, the defense keeps bending but not breaking. And you're quick to point it out, Luke, on Twitter. They're just not utilizing their stars the way that you would want them to.
Yeah. And I have a rant I got to go on this. I'll probably be able to go off on it on the Minnesota football party tomorrow morning too. But first, let me talk to you real quick about Bet Online. So in this one, the under 44.5 got crushed. The spread was just about dead on. Depending on when you got it at Bet Online, you could have got exactly 7 points and would have pushed. You could have got it at Vikings by 7.5, which would have been a Bears cover. You can find all of that and all kinds of other player props and stuff. Could have bet some Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins overs, and made a pretty penny over at betonline.net. You can, of course, bet on all sorts of other games. You could have bet on London stuff. I believe there was a plus 100 Saquon Barkley prop for scoring a touchdown that felt like free money, and that cashed.
I'll take it.
If one were to think, if one were to go to bet on and place a wager, you could do all of that. BetOnline.net, where the game starts. And I swear to God, I'm just going to start betting every single opposing team over, scoring over, until the Vikings figure out this defense. Because holy goodness, it's 3rd and 10. This sent me over the edge, and I'm never going to stop complaining about it. 3rd and 10. You simulated pressure with Danielle Hunter and DJ Wanham over the A-gaps, mugging the A-gaps like Zimmer style, and they back off into coverage. You have Danielle Hunter with a probable one-on-one against Sam Mustipher, arguably the worst center in the league. Daniil Hunter, one-on-one with Sam Mustipher. You made a world where Sam Mustipher didn't have to block anyone on 3rd and 10. He could look for work, and you could have had Daniil Hunter one-on-one on him. What are you doing? Who are you trying to beat? You're letting their worst player have the play off on 3rd and 10, and you're taking your best player and turning him into like a hook zone linebacker like he's freaking Jasper Brinkley. Get out of here with that. You got Harrison Smith's one of the best box safeties the Purple has ever seen. Maybe the best box safety the Vikings have ever seen, depending on your opinion of Joey Browner in the box. And you got him on the roof playing 40 yards deep forever, every single play, completely out of. You get him on the line of scrimmage once, he makes a run stop. It's like he's amazing at this, and we have known this for a decade. So what Ed Donatel is doing is baffling to me. I get deception, and I get like fire zone. The idea is to screw with your protections, but on 3rd and 10, line up your best dudes on their worst dudes and just let him win. He's trying to win the game by himself. I think it's just god awful, and he's got to answer some tough questions this week, I think.
Yeah, this is the biggest thing that you miss with Mike Zimmer is that he often got the blitzes right. And you know, sometimes he'd blitz at the wrong times, he'd get exposed, but you always could count on getting his stars in good places. The blitz rate has been suspiciously low. And you wonder what Donatel, like how Donatel views his secondary. Like, does he feel like he needs 7 in coverage at all times? Because with Denver, he was 25 to 30% every year blitz rate. He's been under 20% and under 15% at times this year with the Vikings. So what's going through his mind? I did feel like they actually brought more today and just didn't get home as much. 2 sacks on Fields. Daniil Hunter has not had the impact, I think, that we hoped in the 3-4. The sack he got today, kind of a DJ Wanham-esque sack, a little bit of a cleanup. He still gets credit for it. That's fine.
Pressure forced by DJ Wanham, by the way.
Correct. They kind of switched roles there. Yeah. Nice DJ Wanham impression by Daniil.
I think Hunter did a lot today. He was making he was forcing a lot of plays. It's just hard when he's backing into coverage so often. Like, you're taking your best player and neutering him.
Yeah, no, that's frustrating, and to allow an offense that is so anemic to get 19 points in a row. You know, if you give up 22 points and you just fill in the blank on the opponent, most of the time you take that. You say, okay, that gave our offense a chance to win, but just the manner in which it happens after holding them at bay for the better part of the first quarter and a half, and then to allow them to get back in the game is pretty disappointing when you could have put the boot on the throat. So I think there are a lot of Donatel adjustments that need to be made because against a better opponent, you're not going to win that football game a lot of the time. And I felt that way the last 2 weeks. So it's not all perfect. And I think the hope has to be that you do make the adjustments going into the middle part of this season and that there is room to improve. I haven't necessarily seen a lot of adjustments being made, though, Luke, which would be the one concern.
Yeah, I like that they blitzed a little bit more. And I think, and I've been saying this since April, this is going to be a sort of incomplete version of what this defense is because they don't feel like they've got dudes that can cover on the outside. And we kind of saw that. Shannon Sullivan was a catastrophe. He was beat one-on-one a whole bunch. He was late to a bunch of things. Got an awesome run stop at the end in a really clutch situation that forced the final field goal to not be a touchdown. Credit for that. But he got killed on that circus catch from Darnell Mooney. He got killed off the line of scrimmage so hard there. He may as well have not been there. And if that were a better throw from Justin Fields, that's 6, and he doesn't have to make that circus catch. Having guys like that, you just can't play a lot of the man-to-man in cover one, so you have to zone everything off, and the only way to generate pressure is to simulate pressure and to change who's backing off and who's doing what. But I think he's just outthinking himself, and the Vikings had personnel in this game with how bad that Bears offensive line is. They had personnel where they didn't have to get fancy, and they probably could have just lined up, rushed for, put Daniil Hunter or Zadarius Smith on Sam Mustipher all day and won, and I feel like Donatel tried so hard to win the game by himself that, like, you've got horses that can do a lot. Just line them up and let them do their thing instead of you being the guy that has to outthink everybody.
Yeah, and maybe we're overthinking it because they did get close on a number of occasions that Fields is still pretty slippery, got
Yeah.
out, and that's tough. I mean,
But
when
they
that
had to break
happens,
contain to do it. So, like, how well did that work?
yeah, they didn't set a lot of great edges to keep him in that pocket. So that's another criticism. I think this is a good one to watch the tape back on to see how rough it truly was and what happened between 21-3 and 22-21.
Right. But all in all, though, the Vikings did go back, get up to 29-22 on that awesome drive at the end of the game. And then Cameron Dantzler, you had a tweet here, a quote from Cameron Dantzler said, "We had some intel on Amir Smith-Marsette that he'd be a little loose with the ball," which after the preseason and all of the punt problems and ball security issues, wow.
Just dunked on him.
Oh my goodness. That's unnecessary.
The double agent Amir Smith-Marsette talk is hysterical. That he's involved in basically 2 plays all day. He nullifies a Justin Fields Michael Vick-esque touchdown, and then he gives the ball away at the very end to Cameron,
Yeah.
and not getting out of bounds too on that play, which he should have.
Yeah.
He should have gotten past Dantzler, got out of bounds, and just a very Bears-esque way to lose that game.
Yeah, and for all the complaints I've had about the secondary and the guys that, Patrick Peterson looks pretty old. Like, Dantzler's playing. He's got his issues and he's a bozo sometimes, playing too far off, and he's not perfect, but he's become inarguably a starting cornerback, and I think that's a step forward for him. And I think that's the note we are left with, because he's the guy that makes the play at the end of the game. So, if you would like a little bit more in depth, you can of course find the Locked On Vikings podcast wherever you find your favorite podcasts, or search that out on YouTube. On this here YouTube feed, you can find the Locked On Minnesota Sports. You can find the Minnesota Football Party, Superior Sports Talk, the Ron Johnson Show, all that stuff, featured and or in some way influenced by Sam Ekstrom, pretty much all across the board there. So for Sam Ekstrom, I'm Luke Braun. This has been the Minnesota Vikings Postcast. We will see you right back here after the game next week. Take care, everybody.